Cliches exist because there's a lot of truth to them, right? And one of those cliches is a young child being afraid of the dark. I don't have specific memories of being afraid of the dark, but I do have one memory. It's in the cobwebs back here somewhere. I think I was about 4 years old, and I remember being in a room, and I can't remember if it was my dad or my mom, but one of them came in and turned the closet light on and left the door cracked open. I don't remember what happened to instigate that, but I can guess. You know, Disney made a great movie about this. Do you remember Monsters, Inc.? Oh yeah, Monsters, Inc. About kids being afraid of what comes out of the closet or from under the bed, right? And what's the adult response to this? What does Dad say when he's trying to watch the last part of Monday Night Football and the kid is screaming, "It's dark"? There's nothing in there. Go to sleep. There is nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing there in the dark that's not there in the daylight. It can't hurt you. The only problem is that darkness actually really does have power. I'll let you argue with me a little bit in your head for a while. Darkness does have power over us, physical darkness. Let me ask you, in the middle of the night when you wake up to go to the bathroom, and yes, I do that more often than I used to, do you jump out of bed and run to the bathroom? No. You get up and you make sure you've found your house slippers first. And then you walk carefully, remembering where each piece of furniture used to be when you could see them. And when the wife leaves the laundry basket right in front of the bathroom door, you discover it in a way that you would not have during the light. That doesn't happen at our house, okay? Okay, let me ask you another question. How much yard work do you get done in December when you come home from work? Unless you have headlights on your little John Deere tractor. You get a lot more work done out in the yard, out around the house during the summertime, especially when the government messes with daylight savings. There's an extra hour of light when you get home so that you can go out and weed eat and edge and trim and pick up the grass, trim all that stuff so that you can go to the tailgating party in the late fall, go to the tailgate party on Saturdays. During the summer, hopefully in June, maybe you're going to a regional baseball game. We can't see what we're doing in the dark. Unless we use artificial light, we cannot see to do stuff in the dark the way we can in the light. It changes our pattern of behavior. It changes what we do. That, folks, is exerting power over you, whether you like it or not. It also has power over your mind. Sometimes over your fears, imagination, even as adults. Maybe you're not picturing Sully, that's his name. Maybe you're not picturing Sully coming out of the closet. But let me just give this example. When my family went on vacation down to Big Bend, and we stayed at the Chisos Lodge. There's about a half-mile trail that goes out to a place where they call the window that looks out to the west. Well, they tell you not to walk that path at night because there are animals out there that are hungry, like mountain lions and javelinas. Those little things are vicious. That didn't stop me. I wanted to walk out to the end of that trail because I could get further away from the light at the lodge, even though they've got really good lighting. I wanted to get further away from the light at the lodge to see the stars, to see the Milky Way. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking mountain lions, javelinas, small child. I'm holding onto her tightly, and we have a flashlight. We're sometimes afraid of the things that we can't see. We sometimes imagine the things that are out there that can do us harm, and when we can't see them, we can't react to them. But darkness also has physical effects on our body. When we are not in the sunshine enough, when we don't get enough daylight, our bodies start to malfunction. The cycle of daylight and then darkness governs our melatonin and serotonin cycles. And when those get messed up, we don't sleep properly. There is the production of vitamin D. Sunlight helps the body produce vitamin D. When you don't get enough sunlight, you don't get enough vitamin D. And that causes some other things. Doctors have done studies, and there are correlations with hypertension, folks. Hypertension, multiple sclerosis, diabetes of both types, rheumatoid arthritis. The list goes on. Things that might be related to a lack of production of vitamin D and a lack of sunshine and other things that does for our bodies. There's another thing that is created when we're in the sunlight. Anybody that used to be a bodybuilder or work out or do a lot of exercising knows this one. Beta endorphins. Beta endorphins make you feel good. The feel good. Endocrine. Not having enough beta endorphins is associated with what's called seasonal affective disorders. Sometimes even full-blown depression. People in Alaska, people in northern Scandinavian areas, when they don't get enough sunlight during the winter months, they can be affected by this seasonal affective disorder or even depression. How many people have been to Scandinavia? How many people have traveled there? Do you remember some of the villages up north and the paint schemes on the buildings? There are a lot of villages there that have very brightly colored buildings, reds and yellows and blues. The reason is to cheer them up. The mind sees those, and during the times that they can see them during the daylight, it boosts that mood. It helps them not be depressed. There's a reason why they paint them that color. This is all about physical darkness. But what about spiritual darkness? Physical light, spiritual light. Physical darkness, spiritual darkness. In the scriptures, God is equated with light. And in fact, the very first act of creation in Genesis, 1, verse 3, God said, "Let there be light." In John 1, John's version of Genesis 1, John says, "In Jesus was life. In him was life, and the life was the light of men, the true light which enlightens all men." Talking about Jesus. But when Adam and Eve rebelled, when they listened to the lies of the serpent and they rebelled against God, they were separated from that light. Spiritually, they entered darkness. And they were unable to exit that darkness. They had not the power to create light themselves. Darkness equals separation from God. In our New Testament epistle reading today, in Colossians, Paul is talking about what God has done to rescue us from that realm of darkness. And right after our lectionary cuts us off and doesn't let us finish, Paul says, "And you guys, the ones who were once alienated from God, the ones who were alienated from God, the ones who were hostile in your minds toward God, the ones who were doing evil deeds, you guys." So did you catch those three things? The Colossians, before they came to faith, before they believed the gospel, they were separated from God. They were angry, hostile towards him in their minds, and they were doing evil deeds. They were separated from the light. They couldn't see what was out there, and they were afraid of it. They were mad at it. And they couldn't see what they were doing. The things that they were doing were evil, and they couldn't see it. But earlier in the letter, also a part that our lectionary cuts out, Paul is talking to them about how he has heard the reports of how they've received the gospel. He's heard how their faith and their love toward one another shows that they have received the gospel of Jesus Christ. And Paul says, "From the day that we heard about you, we haven't ceased to pray for you. Giving thanks," I skipped a little bit there if you're reading, "giving thanks to the Father, the one who qualified you to share in the inheritance of the saints in the light." And then we pick up our reading. Because we're thankful, we're giving him thanks, because God has delivered us from the domain, from the realm, from the power of darkness, and he's transferred us. He has moved us over and placed us in the kingdom of his Son of love. And it is in the Son of love that we have the ransoming back, the forgiveness of sins. So at once we were alienated, separated, we were in the darkness. Now we have been rescued. We have been placed into his kingdom. In verse 22, Paul says, you guys, the ones who were separated, the ones who were angry, the ones who were doing evil deeds. God has now reconciled you in his body of flesh by his death. Jesus, I should say, has reconciled you. Jesus has reconciled you. Why? Paul tells them, in order to present you holy, blameless, and without reproach. So once you were alienated, now you have been taken out of the darkness, placed in the kingdom of Christ, set aside. That's what the word holy means. Set aside for use in God's kingdom. Once you were angry in your minds towards God, now, because Jesus has reconciled you, you will be blameless. Blameless. There will be no accusations to you, no reason for you to be angry back. The accusations have been placed on Christ. Once you were doing evil deeds. But now that you have been removed from that darkness and placed in the kingdom of light, now, because of what God has done, no one will be able to accuse you of anything evil. Satan will try to accuse you, but it won't stick. The fullness of what God has done, we haven't seen yet. We're still here. The darkness still seems to hold sway over us. Sometimes we do still feel alienated, when we feel alone, when we feel isolated, cut off from people, from God. Sometimes it might feel like the darkness is winning, especially on a long winter night when you're alone. But because of the work of Christ, that is an illusion now. The darkness does not hold sway over those who have been rescued by God. Paul says that Jesus did all of this in order to present us holy, blameless, and above reproach before him. And then Paul says these words, if indeed you continue in the faith, if you remain stable and steadfast and do not move from the hope of the gospel that you have heard. Hold on to the hope. Hold on to that teaching. Hold on to the faith that Jesus Christ in his body, through his death and resurrection, has reconciled us with God the Father. He has done away with that alienation. He has done away with the separation. God, through his work, has taken us out of darkness and put us into his light. And even here in this age, in this realm that is still covered in darkness, we are now his light. We are his light to the people that we see day in and day out at the grocery store, across the street, next door, behind us, at school, at work. We are the light that God will use to call others out of that kingdom of darkness. A person doesn't take a light, stick it under a bushel, puts it out in a room where it lights the whole room where you can see. And a city of light that's on a hill is a beacon for everyone to see. There's a city like that on the other side of Galilee, away from Bethsaida and Capernaum. There was a Greek city. It was right on the top of a hill, right at the edge of the Sea of Galilee. And if you were navigating at night, you always knew where you were because you could see the light of that city. If we remain in that faith, if we continue steadfast and stable and not be moved from the hope that is in us, then we are that city. This congregation is that city on the hill that shines a light out into a dark sea for other people to navigate. That's our job. We're a lighthouse. Have fun with that analogy. Be a light in a dark place. Amen.